In this presentation, I'm going to seek to show how cryptographically guaranteed relationships will change society, how smart contracts, blockchains, and even Web2 systems are a new type of application called trust minimized applications, and how Oracle networks are at the epicenter of creating this massive shift in both providing cryptographic guarantees and in creating the near-term trust minimized applications that will change the world to be a more cryptographically guaranteed place. In looking at it more and more over the past decade, I have come to the conclusion that society has a defense mechanism for misbehavior of institutions, and most recently, a defense mechanism for the misbehavior of technology platform as institutions. That defense mechanism is actually encryption. And we already have seen, even in the last decade or so, the application of cryptographic guarantees to return society back to a place where it can do certain key things like communicate. If you think back approximately 10 years ago, I think you'll remember that very few people knew or understood what end-to-end encryption was, or why somebody shouldn't send some sensitive information over an SMS text message through a telecommunications system. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, everybody would send the most sensitive information over unencrypted messages through text messaging on your standard SMS mobile application, basically using the little green icon and sending text messages. Now, the average teenager and the average consumer knows what end-to-end encrypted messaging is, and at the top of certain widely used messaging applications like WhatsApp, at the top of every chat session, it says end-to-end encrypted, and then it even describes what that means in a sentence. Why has the world shifted from sending the craziest things over unencrypted channels to the average user wanting to use end-to-end encrypted messaging systems like Telegram, Signal, and others? Well, it's because the institutions, whether they were larger technology institutions, governmental institutions, or technology platform institutions in the form of Web2, failed. They failed their users, and those users lost faith in them as a technology provider for communications. It was no longer acceptable for users to simply say, oh, it's a big telecom, it's safe. Or, oh, don't worry about it, nothing can ever go wrong if the government decides to look into every single message you ever sent. Or any number of other kind of very vague, brand-based, paper-based guarantees. Those guarantees fell away because of things like Cambridge Analytica, because of the misuse of various assumptions that users had about the privacy of their messaging data, and because of many, many cases where telecoms didn't deliver the security and privacy that they promised to. But how was faith for users and for the general public restored when it came to communications and basic text messaging capabilities? It was encryption, which is a form of cryptographic guarantee. This proves to me, even in a very near-term way, that the difference between a paper promise and a cryptographic guarantee is extremely valuable and highly valued by users once they understand what that guarantee is. In the form of messaging, that guarantee has become widely understood as end-to-end encrypted messaging. And the lack of end-to-end encrypted messaging is no longer a reasonable standard. The new minimum standard is end-to-end encrypted messaging, whether it's on WhatsApp or Signal or Telegram or any number of other capabilities. This is what I predict will happen to the rest of the world. The rest of the world has many different systems that secure and create relationships between peers about something that I think is more valuable than message text, namely the economic life of those users is guaranteed by various centrally run brand servers. And the logic is the same as the logic that existed to use unencrypted traditional text messaging is don't worry about it. It's with a telecom. There's a nice big brand, nothing to worry about. I'll just send it. And we have, as a society, been building to a threshold where the brands that guarantee your economic relationship, even with your own assets, not to say anything of your relationship with peers that you want to trade with, or ad networks, or gaming systems. Those brands have also continually failed their users, whether that's through things like Enron, Lehman, or whether that's through technology platforms not fulfilling the expectations of their users in the form of Robinhood and the GameStop saga. At the end of the day, it all comes down to the same thing. The expectations and guarantees that users thought they had, they don't have. And they won't have those guarantees until they become cryptographically guaranteed. And this is what our industry is about, and this is what Oracle networks are about. Our body of work on Chainlink and the general body of work on blockchains and smart contracts is about creating a cryptographically guaranteed society. Just like we now have cryptographically guaranteed communications. This transition to a cryptographically guaranteed society is going to happen through what we call a trust minimized application. There's a wide spectrum of what makes a trust minimized application. You can actually have a trust minimized application that's a web server that simply relies on blockchains or smart contracts or Oracle networks to prove certain things to users about what that web server can and can't do. That is the beginning of being a trust minimized application. And we already work with many great Web 2 applications that are now becoming trust minimized. There are also fully trust minimized applications, which are DeFi smart contracts that are run on chain and that are triggered and executed by Oracle networks, both of which are fully trust minimized systems. This transition to a cryptographically guaranteed society is what we are working on. It is what the Chainlink network is about. It is what our body of work is about. It is what we are committed to creating by spending countless hours, late nights, days, and years in providing infrastructure. Our goal in working on Chainlink is to provide infrastructure that creates trust minimized applications, allowing a transition to a cryptographically guaranteed society. And when I say a cryptographically guaranteed society, I mean a global market for everything, from commodities to equities to real estate to derivatives to insurance agreements to global trade, advertising, gaming, ticket sales, anything and everything where you have a digital relationship between you and a band, between you and the game, between you and the equity, between you and a commodity, between you and an insurance product, between you and a global trade partner. These are all relationships that right now are not guaranteed. And what we're fundamentally saying is that they will all become cryptographically guaranteed, because just like end-to-end encrypted messaging is the new minimum standard for communications in society, cryptographically guaranteed relationships are the new minimum for how we interact with each other as peers, with each other through platforms, and even with each other through institutions. And that's why the trust minimized application market and the smart contract market is essentially the largest technology market in the world, because it is a reformatting of all digital relationships into a cryptographically guaranteed form, the better form, the form that all of us want, but only some of us understand. This is the body of work that we are focused on creating an infrastructure that allows Web 2 systems to become trust minimized applications, or for Web 3 systems to expand into new categories by making entirely new, fully trust minimized applications. The first category of activity where we've done this is market data, where we have now been seen as the standard and, quite frankly, are credited with continually expanding what the DeFi world is capable of. Since then, we've expanded to computation and soon expanding into cross-chain communications. Our goal with the Chainlink network initially was to invent a new form of consensus that generated aggregations of key data sets. And that was done so successfully that over 70% of the entire DeFi industry, according to certain public sources, is powered by Chainlink Oracle networks. In certain key verticals of DeFi, it's more than 70%. This is both because we were able to invent this original form of consensus and because the Chainlink network and the Chainlink community were able to create the largest and best configuration of nodes and the largest and best configuration of high-quality data. This data is becoming rapidly adopted across DeFi, gaming, insurance, and other categories. And the rate at which this data is being put on in not only the market categories, but other categories is also only continuing to accelerate. The next goal that the Chainlink network set out to kind of prove was that you could use Oracle networks for computations beyond data. In this vein, the verifiable randomness function, VRF, Chainlink VRF, was created and has now gone on to become one of the most widely used, if not the most widely used, source of random number generation in the entire blockchain industry across various chains. Interestingly enough, just like we've seen Web 2 systems using market data from Chainlink Oracle networks, we are now starting to see an increasing number of Web 2 gaming companies wanting to use the random numbers generated by the combination of Oracle networks and blockchains to prove to their Web 2 users that they are a trustworthy application, essentially to use encryption and cryptographic guarantees to prove that they are a trust minimized application. And the same dynamic that we saw with the adoption of data driving the growth of DeFi, we now see with the adoption of random number generation and other type of gaming related data, leading to both a massive influx of gaming into the blockchain industry, as well as the noticing of that influx by Web 2 systems that would like to add a certain measure of cryptographic guarantee onto their system, which once again allows them to also benefit from Oracle networks, whether they're about data or computations like random number generation. The general adoption of Chainlink services has continued to increase across services, whether data, or computation. And this is quite simply evidenced by the amount of various projects that are integrating Chainlink into their infrastructure, into their architecture, once again, in both the Web 2 category of applications and the Web 3 category of applications. One example that I'm particularly interested in recently is proof of reserves that is continuing to become adopted by multiple different stablecoin providers and multiple different systems that want to create baskets of assets on chain, but need to prove the state of those assets off chain. And this is another very simple example where having an Oracle network that can come to consensus about something that a blockchain network cannot come to consensus about, namely the state of an off-chain asset, accelerates the creation and adoption of various new smart contract use cases, like more and more advanced stable coins, more and more advanced inflation-resistant systems and derivatives. The two key dynamics that all of this is leading to for the Chainlink network is both the continually increasing adoption of various Chainlink services, which gives the Chainlink community more and more good reason to launch various new categories of services. So we are seeing a multitude of different data providers and a multitude of various data sources beyond market data appearing in the Chainlink network and being used by various advanced applications in insurance, gaming, DeFi, and others. We are also seeing a continual demand for computations, whether they're for automation via keepers or random number generation for gaming. This demand is leading to a continual improvement of parts of the Chainlink protocol like random number generation, which just got a very large update, which has seen a huge uptick in usage as a result. Our next stages for the provision of continual improvement, basically, of the Chainlink network and the capabilities and services that we want to see in the Chainlink network as a community is the provision of DECO, which is a private data privacy preserving part of the protocol, which will allow privacy sensitive data and certain privacy sensitive computations to be done in Oracle networks, as well as the expansion of Oracle networks to more and more advanced computations, whether that means putting parts of a smart contract into a keeper's network, or if it's entirely novel parts of the protocol like fair sequencing services, which we are all building together with a large community of users, collaborators, and developers. All of these additional parts of the protocol, whether they're for creating greater privacy for Oracle networks, expanding its computational capabilities, or providing cross-chain communications, will, in my opinion, continue the pattern of enabling more and more advanced smart contract use cases that were previously not possible. Once again, contributing to the virtuous cycle of Oracle networks creating the key infrastructure to make more advanced trust minimized applications, those trust minimized applications coming to existence, their existence leading to adoption and a greater collective consciousness of trust minimized applications as an option, and therefore more and more trust minimized applications coming into existence for the consumption, leading to the greater consumption of the decentralized services, creating a greater market for them, and creating even more reason to put various amounts of resources, capital, human resources, and for the community to continue to put their resources into creating more advanced versions of the protocol, whether that's the data side, the random number generation side, or the more advanced compute side. This is a dynamic we continue to see grow year over year. And I'm very proud to say that the efforts that we've been putting forward on, whether it's been on the data side, the random number generation side, the computation side, or I expect on the cross-chain communication side, are all being widely used and widely recognized as the most desirable, most secure standard for that type of data aggregation, computation, and soon enough cross-chain communication. The second dynamic that we continue to see is a continual decline in the costs of providing all of these decentralized Oracle network services. I would say that the costs for providing decentralized Oracle network services peaked last year after the release of OCR 1.0 in 2021. We saw a 10x reduction in the cost to put various networks on chain, while seeing a huge explosion in the amount of networks going from the low hundreds to soon crossing 1,000. And we also continually saw a decline in the cost of providing everything from randomness to data to other categories of data and computation. These declines were driven by the increasing efficiency of blockchains themselves. And if you look at blockchains as a competitive dynamic, what are blockchains competing with each other on? You'll see that one of the key properties that they're all seeking to compete with each other on is scalability and cost of transactions. And whether they're more established blockchains or whether they're new blockchains, they're all seeking to compete on the scalability of their system and the cost efficiency of their system. This competition has already led more and more Chainlink Oracle networks to become profitable on the blockchains that are known for their cost efficiency, like Polygon or BNB. We've also seen two additional dynamics that are very hopeful for continuing to reduce costs even more. One is the idea of introducing a kind of fast lane or a specific part of the protocol for transactions related to oracles as a public good. That's a more technical solution to reducing the costs of oracle networks so that they can provide greater and greater amounts of value to developer ecosystems in larger volume at lower costs. The second one is actually via blockchain grants for multiple blockchains, providing an elimination of the cost of putting oracle requests on chain, which greatly benefits the blockchain environments that do so by providing them a massive influx of high quality data and other key oracle network services to allow them to get a better and better developer ecosystem. Both the continually increasing efficiency and therefore continually decreasing costs of blockchain transactions and the ability to either create technical ways to minimize the cost of oracle networks as a shared public good, or the appearance of blockchain grants for multiple blockchains, which will be, getting announced sometime this year, to eliminate the cost of on-chain transactions, essentially turning oracle networks into a kind of public good. All these cost reductions essentially create a highly efficient environment in which to provide more and more oracle network services to smart contracts. This leads us into the beginning of Chainlink Economics 2.0, which is going to be kicked off by staking this year. These two dynamics of continually more services, providing continually more data and more value to a greater and greater breadth of smart contracts. As more DeFi smart contracts, gaming smart contracts, this dynamic NFT smart contracts come to life. All of these additional contracts and all of these additional services continually generate more revenue, while at the same time having the costs go down. This is why we think this year is an appropriate time to begin the transition to Chainlink Economics 2.0 with the launch of staking, because the economics of Chainlink Oracle networks are continuing to improve at a rapid rate, both in the amount of revenue from the amount of apps and in the reduction of costs necessary to provide those services, which essentially means that a greater share of revenue will flow to node operators and the stakers that provide stake for the crypto economic security guarantees that will continue to improve the security of the system, as well as the eventual loss protection guarantees of the system. Our initial plans for Chainlink staking as the beginning of Chainlink Economics 2.0 include a very early version with staking rewards, a partner growth program, basic reputation systems, the beginning of slashing in the form of an alerting network, and all of this being applied to the most value securing system that we have, the ETHUSD network. We then plan to expand to the full slashing mechanism, distribution of user fees to stakers, node delegation, a more advanced, more fully formed reputation system to make sure that the better nodes get a greater share of revenue, and the expansion of this more advanced staking system to many more data feeds. The subsequent iteration will build on everything in the previous version 1, and will expand staking to include the fees and to provide security to the various other service types, whether that's randomness or keepers or other categories of services, as well as the introduction of loss protection as an interesting and important part of the protocol. Chainlink Economics and where it is now is on track with the plan and the roadmap that was initially set out in regards to the Chainlink network. The initial part of the plan is continuing to succeed in terms of adoption and in terms of cost reduction, because the amount of various services that are powering more and more advanced smart contract use cases is only continuing to grow. So the amount of services is continuing to grow, the amount of chains that the services are on is continuing to grow, the amount of users for each service is continuing to grow, and the variety of users across services is continuing to grow, with many users now actually using multiple Chainlink services, one service for data, another service for randomness, another service for automation, and many of them are on track to use the cross-chain communication service for making their smart contract a cross-chain capable dApp. This means that not only are smart contracts using the key services that they need, but they're continuing to expand in what they're capable of through the additional services that the Chainlink network provides them, even if that wasn't the service where they started. While we're doing all this, we are on track in integrating more and more chains, both EVM and non-EVM chains. We are right now, by our estimation, the most widely integrated system in the blockchain industry. And based on the integration framework improvements that we're making this year, we expect to continually be the most widely integrated single abstraction layer for all chains. Now, this caters to a different category of users, namely the enterprises and the Web 2 systems that want to use blockchains through a single abstraction layer, through a single interface. This part of the plan is also well underway and being worked on by multiple community members. And we are seeing multiple banks, insurance companies, and other large enterprises looking at how to use Chainlink as an abstraction layer, not just for using decentralized services, but also for utilizing blockchains generally. This, once again, creates its own very impressive virtuous cycle, where the ability to get enterprises to use blockchains and smart contracts enables a greater level of adoption that brings cryptographically guaranteed relationships and systems into the world faster. As those cryptographically guaranteed relationships and systems become more widely adopted and become more advanced, they not only contribute to our goal of making a society powered by cryptographic guarantees, but they also create greater demand for those services that allow them to exist, namely those same decentralized Oracle networks that provide data, randomness, compute, cross-chain communications, and so on. So our ability to provide a single, easy-to-use interface for blockchains of all types will actually accelerate the adoption of smart contracts and blockchains in a way that makes the decentralized services that are already basically widely accepted as being standardized by Chainlink as being the key building blocks of these more advanced applications. So basically, as we have an abstraction layer that simplifies adoption, more adoption leads to consumption of more services, which allows the creation of even better services and the creation of even better smart contracts, which makes the use of an abstraction layer even more attractive because you can do more by going into the blockchain industry and making cryptographically guaranteed applications. Both of these stages of enabling cryptographically guaranteed systems and applications is something that we feel will lead to a world powered by cryptographic truth. This is the third stage of the Chainlink network and its adoption. It's the ability for the world to work in a cryptographically guaranteed way, because Web 2 systems use Oracle networks and smart contracts use Oracle networks to do more advanced things. Basically, wherever the reality of the world lives, whether it's settled on Web 2 servers or whether it's settled on Web 3 smart contracts, there will always be a need for a truth machine. And that truth machine will be the deciding factor of what happens for those trust minimized applications. And a society powered by cryptographic guarantees needs a system of cryptographic truth to prove what happened, whether that's about random numbers, market data, weather events, or even just computations that the trust minimized application needs. This is the world that we're moving towards. If this is a world that you find interesting, we'd be thrilled to see you attend our conference, SmartCon 2022. It's going to be in New York at the end of September. We're going to have many great speakers like Eric Schmidt and others come talk about their views on how a cryptographically guaranteed society is the future. It's going to be a very building-focused conference. that's going to really focus on how to build the next generation of trust minimized applications. I hope you can join us there, and I'd be very excited to meet many of you and hear about what you're building. Thank you.